Supplies needed for the summer firefly painting. Canvas. Paint we're going to use today is acrylic paint. I'm using dark blue, green, white, yellow, orange, and black. 2 paintbrushes, 1 flat, doesn't matter what size, and 1 thin one for detail. Cup of water to wash the brushes, paper towel to wipe them off. Hi, I'm Melissa from Paint Party LI, and I'm going to be painting with you today the summer fireflies. Okay, so we're going to get started by wetting the canvas. If you are using cardboard or paper or poster board, you don't need to wet it first, only if you're painting on a stretched canvas. If you have one of the kits, you'll have the stretched canvas. All right, so we're going to take the flat brush, a little bit of water, and we're just going to wet the canvas with a nice thin coat of water. You don't want it dripping all the way down, just a nice thin coat. So I'm going to just keep dipping it. I'm working my way down, all the way down to the bottom. Okay, just a nice thin coating. If it starts to drip, you just want to spread it out a little bit. Okay, this just helps prime the canvas and get it ready for the paint so that you don't have to put as much water in your brush or use as much paint on there to get it all the way into those little nooks and crannies of the canvas. All right, so a nice thin coat. We're gonna get started with that, and now we're gonna apply a little bit of paint. So when we get started, we're gonna be using dark blue first, and I'm gonna start by applying it on an angle. So I'm dipping my brush into the dark blue paint. If you don't have a kit and you only have a light blue, you can either use that or you can add a tiny bit of black to it. All right, so I'm going to start in the corner and I'm going to work on an angle, going all the way across, keeping the same angle. I'm going to go back over and do a second coat. Right now I'm just laying down the first part of this. So we're going thin coat, and we're doing half the canvas on the angle from corner to corner. Okay, so all the way across here, half of it, and you'll see it's very thin and streaky and you can see through it. All right, but we're gonna add a second coat to that. So we're gonna let that dry a little bit, and then we will move on to doing a second coat. So when it looks a little less shiny, it does dry very quickly. It looks a little bit more matte finish and not so shiny. You're gonna go back over and do a second coat. Okay, so I've allowed it to dry a little bit, and now I'm going to start up with a second coat. Cleaning off my brush, drying it off, going back into that blue paint, and you'll see this time it covers a lot more. That second time around, you just have to make sure that first coat is nice and dry. This is okay if it's still a little bit streaky, but the second coat will cover really nicely. It's okay to have it a little bit though, so I don't mind seeing those little lines of that paintbrush in there. Just make sure you're going on the diagonal. Okay, all the way across. I'm just gonna grab my paints here. Going nice and thin with the paint. You don't wanna go super thick. Okay, all the way on an angle. Doing that second coat. Again, it's okay if it's a little bit streaky, but that second coat should really stop it from being really, really streaky. You're also welcome to paint around the edges if you have one of the paint kits with a canvas that is a stretched canvas. Okay, so you want to go around the side edges as well. Okay, again, you want to make sure that paint is nice and thin because the next step we're going to be painting over it. All right, so now I'm going to clean off my brush. Tapping it down to the bottom of the cup, getting all the paint out. And then I'm going to dry it off on my paper towel. Okay, I'm going to now dip into some orange paint. Okay, and what I'm going to do is start from the bottom over here. the bottom corner. I'm going to keep doing that same angle of painting. Okay, just gonna move it back a little bit. Going right across here, same angle, okay? And I'm starting in the bottom corner so that my orange is nice and clean, because by the time I get to here, I'm going to overlap them a little bit, and I want to do this while the blue, that second coat, is still wet. This way they blend together. Okay, so I'm doing orange and meeting it right in the middle with that blue, and I'm going to overlap about an inch or so of it and drag some of that blue into the orange on purpose. Okay, so I'm doing that same angle with that flat, bigger brush, whatever size one you have. If you have one of the kits, you'll have the right size that I'm using, but as long as it's flat, that's all you need. Flat brush, doesn't really matter what size it is. Okay, so I'm filling this in on an angle. And then as I get close to this blue, which again is still wet, which I want it to be, I'm gonna take this orange paint and I'm gonna drag it into the blue and go right back and pull some of it across into the orange so it starts to blend a little bit right in the middle there, okay? So I'm going up into the blue about an inch or so, and then I'm pulling it back down into the orange. You'll see I'm just brushing back and forth across where those two colors meet, and I'm pulling some of that blue in there. I'm actually going to add a tiny bit more blue to my brush, and I'm going to brush it right back over the edge of this orange. I want to darken up that orange for the first couple of inches of it, just like this. Doing a little bit of blue so it blends. You want to do this while it's wet so those colors blend together. Okay, going all the way across where it meets, pulling some orange up into the blue, and then pulling some of that blue down into the orange, so that middle piece kind of is a mixture of the two of them. Okay, and then I'm going to clean off my brush, tapping it down to the bottom of the cup, getting all the paint out, and then wiping it off on the paper towel. Okay, at this point, we need this background to be dry for the next step. So what I'm going to do is blow dry it real quick. If you want to do the same, you can. Otherwise, you're just going to wait a few minutes. You can pause me, wait a few minutes till it looks dry, and then you'll move on to the next step. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now that my background is dry, I'm going to start adding all the fun blades of grass. And when I do that, I'm going to do them all different lengths, have them wiggle a little bit as they go up, and I'll have some that go much shorter, much taller. Okay, I'm going to use my flat brush for that. I'm just going to clean it off, dry it off a little bit. Now, when I first do the blades of grass, I'm going to take a little tiny bit of black and I'm going to mix it with some green. So I get a nice, deep, dark, blackish green. Okay, I'm just mixing it with a little tiny bit of that green. Okay, I'm going to get it on my brush, and then I'm going to bring my brush to the side of the plate like this so that the bristles get nice and flat. Okay, and I'm going to use this edge of the brush to make the shapes of the blades of grass. If you're not using a kit and maybe your brushes are much bigger or much thicker, you may want to switch to the skinny one to make the blades of grass and then just kind of fill them in and make them thicker. All right, so with that bigger brush, I'm going to start here in the orange, and I'm just going to drag it along and then lift up as I get close to the top. Okay, so I'm going to push down on the bottom a little bit to make it a little thicker, and then as I drag it up, I'm going to lift up the brush. This way I get a nice point on the top here. I'm using this dark blackish green because these are going to be the ones in the background, so I want them to look darker, a little further away in the shadow here. Okay, these can overlap each other. The only real thing you want to do is, again, keep them different lengths. Push down a little harder on your brush when you start off, and then lift up to get a nice skinny top to that. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and do some that kind of overlap each other, and I'm going to work my way across. You don't have to do a ton of them. You can always go back also and thicken the bottom. So if you are painting with a skinny brush, you want to just make sure they look a little bit thick, like these blades of grass. Okay, I'm just working my way across with this dark blackish green, because the one I put in front is going to be a little bit brighter of a green color, so that these look like they are in the background. Okay, so again, I have some shorter ones and I have some taller ones. I'm gonna keep the bulk of the taller ones on the far side in the orange. Okay, I'm not filling it all in completely because I do want to do some regular lighter green over it, and I want to leave some room for some of those. So I'm just using a little bit of this dark paint to go in here. Here's a little taller one, and then I'm going to do some short ones all the way across here of this dark green, again making it thicker towards the bottom. Okay, you can always go back in there and make it a little bit thicker. Okay, so I've got a good amount now of those darker blades of grass. Again, you can go back in and just kind of make sure the bottom looks like a little bit thicker than the top part. The top part should look skinny. If you're having trouble making that skinny come to a point, again, it's dragging it and applying less pressure. So you're gonna pull your brush away from the canvas very gently, and it makes a nice point. If you're still having trouble, you can always go back in with that little skinny brush. And don't press down, but you want to then drag it across and make a nice little point on some of those blades of grass. Okay, so whenever you're not using the paintbrush, you do want to make sure that it ends up in the water. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my bigger brush. I'm going to go back in and add those lighter green blades of grass. Okay, cleaned it off, dried it off a little bit. All right, I'm just going into that straight green now. And I'm going to start back where I started, because that's where the blades of grass will be drier. And I'm going to go in there, and now these will actually look green, so they'll look like they're a little bit closer up. Okay, closer to you in the picture. And I'm going across again, just kind of randomly placing them, overlapping them, some taller, some shorter. Going with my blades of grass, so you'll be able to see the darker ones kind of peeking through here and there. Okay, remember to keep the blade of grass a little thicker towards the bottom, and it should get a little skinnier towards the top, which means as you go, pushing down harder towards the bottom, then dragging it along and lifting it as you go across. Okay, so I'm just going to add a bunch more over here and get a bunch more of these blades of grass. Again, overlapping, kind of filling in that bottom a little bit so that eventually most of that bottom will be covered up. Okay, so thicker towards the bottom of that blade of grass. Couple of tall ones here and there, but I'm keeping most of my tall ones right over here. I'm just going to go over this a little bit. Okay, making that filled in kind of over here a little bit, starting to fill in the bottom part. I'm going to do some little shorter ones that are right in front. I'm not covering up those dark ones completely. They'll be peeking through. Again, that'll give them the look that they're in the background of this painting. Okay, so I'm starting to fill in across as I go so that most of that is filled in here. All right, now the amount of blades of grass is going to be whatever you're happy with when you start to feel like it's nice and full. Again, they overlap each other, that's fine. Okay, once you get the amount that you're happy with, I'm going to put that big brush in the water, and we're going to switch over to that skinny brush, and we're going to start adding all the little fireflies in. Now, there's just going to be the light from the fireflies. We're not actually going to see the fireflies. So it's like you see them lit up, flying around in the grass. So I'm cleaning off, drying off that skinny brush. What I'm going to do is mix some white with some yellow. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have a lot of dark colors on here and I want them to show up. So that white helps it like a blocker to block out the dark colors in the background. Okay, so I have my skinny brush, and what I'm gonna do is start adding in my fireflies. So I've got a nice big fat one right here, making a little circle, okay? And then I'm just gonna do these little circles that go around it like there's a glow. And so I'm just kind of making these little dashes. I'm not circling it. Okay, skinny little lines right around that little firefly so it looks like there's a little glow around it. Okay, I'm gonna do a few more like that, different sizes. That'll be my biggest one. So I start with a little circle and then I'm going around it. And I keep going around with these little short movements of the brush in a circular motion just to kind of start giving it like a glow around it. Okay, I'm gonna do a few of those here and there. Do another one up in the corner that's kind of cut off. A little glow going right there. And I'm gonna do one down in the grass over here too. Little circle. Again, different sizes, some smaller, some bigger. That's really gonna be my biggest one, the first one I did. The rest of them will all be a little bit smaller. So now I'm just gonna look for an empty space where I wanna break it up and put another one. So I start with that little dot in the middle and then I drag it around. Maybe I'll do another one up here so they're not all just in a little row. Same exact technique each time. Starting with that little dot, I'm gonna do one more over here and I think that's it for the ones with the big glow. All the other ones will just be little dots. Okay, so I've got a little glowing one down there too. I'm gonna clean off my brush. I'm gonna dry it off. And I'm actually gonna pick whichever brush has the thickest handle to it. Okay, so let me just clean my brush off here. And I'll show you real quick. So this is my bigger brush. It has a thicker handle. I'm going to use that so that I can start dotting in some of the other little tiny fireflies. These are the biggest ones that are closest up. These are the ones we're going to do now are little dots. They're a little bit further away. And it's going to be a little bit random, kind of here and there around it. And then I'm just going to make a cluster of them that goes across the middle. Okay, so I'm going to start dotting here and there to give these little dots like they're little fireflies here. Okay, dotting here and there. Okay, I'm going to add a few down in between in the blades of grass here. Okay, now I'm going to pick one little area to kind of cluster them across, and I'm going to do that right here. You can pick anywhere, but what I'm going to do is just leave the other ones kind of random. And now I'm going to go real close, dotting back and forth in a little cluster that kind of works its way diagonally across the entire painting. Okay, so I'm just literally taking a little on my handle and dotting it across. All the way across here. I'll make sure you have enough paint on there to really get a nice little round dot. I have a little cluster of them working away across there now. And you really can go as crazy with this as you want to, adding as many in or as few in as you like. But you'll see I kind of just kept that cluster in one thick cluster going across, and the rest are kind of random little dots. All right, when you are done with that, you can clean off the handle of your brush Put your brush in the water. Your very last step is to take your skinny little brush, any color that you want that will show up on here. I'm gonna use white. And you're gonna paint your initials down in the corner. Once you are done with that, you are completely done. Thanks so much for painting with me today. I hope you had fun painting the summer fireflies. Thanks, bye-bye.